Hello everyone, before this video starts, I would appreciate if you guys would leave a like and subscribe, since your support means the world to me and allows me to make these types of videos. Now let's get into the video. There is an evil in this valley, I know that now. It exists in every stone, every felled tree, and the air we breathe. It is old, following my family from generation to generation. From the first step we took here long ago, to right outside my window at this very moment. It is difficult to grasp at first because it hides from you, but you learn to live with it. You have to because it never concedes, not an inch, and it is slowly gaining on us. When Dad still walked, he used to take me on hunting trips. Often the snow would be so thick and the air so biting cold that I cried throughout the whole ordeal. Of course, this wasn't ideal when the whole point was to be quiet, at one with nature, awaiting a very precise moment. He usually told me as much. "Ain't much room for people like us anymore," he said one particular morning. A layer of freshly fallen snow covered the ground and glittered in the sunlight. The lightest chirps could be heard all around us if you listened. I laid prone with my dad right beside me, perched at the top of a hill overlooking a field below. He held the rifle and I the binoculars. Though it wasn't cold, weirdly. This brand of winter I could endure. "Ain't much money in what we do either," he said. "Don't know how much time we've got left. You've got to enjoy it, son." When he started groveling like that, I turned my ears away. As a child, I didn't comprehend our situation fully. But he was right. There isn't much, if any, money in ranching. At best, you break even. At worst, you ring bark your family tree. However, he always tells me to forget all that money is and do it for the love of it. For the freedom of always getting to choose. For the horses, for the cattle, for the family, and for the valley. "Remember, squeeze softly. Do it when you exhale," he said, handing me the weapon. We'd spotted a doe jumping through the field. I have always thought they look too big to bounce like they do. It is almost like they're filled to the brim with helium. Wondrous creatures. It is amazing what you can see when you look, when you notice details. I had shot a gun thrice up until that point. The only difference between those times and that time was the target. Gone was the empty jerry can. Now the barrel was pointed at one of God's creations. That is, if he even exists. Somehow I doubt that nowadays. We were raised Catholic, but ever since I took over the ranch, I've been drifting towards the spiritual, the religion of the land. That is the only belief I have received any sort of tangible evidence for. Still, I was a bit nervous, I recall. I think I even shuddered a little with every breath my tiny lungs produced. I aimed the gun, gently guiding the crosshair, placing it over the animal. I inhaled. Time seemed to stop. Then, "Wait, quiet," Dad whispered, looking at something through the binoculars. "I am quiet!" He hushed me with vigor. Not the time to be annoying, I guessed. He pointed at something in the distance, by some pine at the foot of the mountain. It was far away, yet seemed aware of us. It was another deer. And it stood there. Yes, stood. The thing stood on its fucking hind legs. It didn't lean against a tree, in which case it would have been slightly less unsettling, nor did it try to reach for some high-up leaves. It just stood there. My dad started getting agitated, and soon he looked just as nervous as I was. After what seemed like an impossible amount of the time, the deer turned around, still on two legs, and walked off into the forest. I couldn't place what made its movement so bizarre back then, but I can now. It walked like a human, the knees bent the wrong way. "We should go back home now," my dad said. "Mommy wouldn't want us to miss supper." That was the first time I encountered one of them, but it wasn't the last. That's why I'm writing this. Things have escalated these last couple of weeks. They are learning faster than before. I do not know how much longer I can pick them out, and then I can no longer protect us. I think one of them is inside the house right now, but I can't be sure. Sorry, I'll deal with that when it comes to it. Let me tell you the rest. Time passed and suddenly I found myself in the position of patriarch. Dad wanted to retire, or at least he thought so. He kept working the stables and breaking horses until he no longer could. Good man. When I took over, we stopped focusing on cattle production. In the modern world, you have to be a large corporation to make that type of venture profitable. So what do you do as a small, family-owned ranch? You focus on quality. That's what you do. And that is where the horses enter the equation. You invest in a reputable stallion, feed him, keep him happy and healthy. We only bought the finest hay, burning through our savings fast. Why do the horses need that fancy stuff? Dad asked one night. They do not need it, but the buyers need to know we feed it to them, I replied. Old man had a point. It was a risky play, but turns out it would work out in the end. We bred that first stallion, Speedy Newton II, over and over again. Soon we had quite the roster on our hands, and we always made sure to market our horses well. We became famous in the world of equestrian sports, and it became sort of a status symbol to own one of our full-bloods. That is how we modernized the business with a strategy similar to what Apple did back in the early 21st century. Luxury goods, basically. And it made us rich, or at least it took us out of destitution. For the first time ever, we could afford to hire some cowboys, build a bunkhouse, and further push our margins into the green. That has been our reality for the last decade or so, and we now have horses all over the world. I do not intend to dox myself here, not for fear of what you might do to me. Mind you, it's just better if you can't find this land. But we are one of the top-ranked stables in the world at the moment of writing. Last month, the first domino fell. Me and a couple of day workers were cleaning the stalls in the stable. It was a tight-knit group of people, and I had the greatest time just chatting with them, tugging their chain a little. I think we were talking about the Tigers game when I noticed something in the corner of my eye. Newton was staring at me, and it wasn't the usual empty-minded horse stare. It had intent, or malice even. His skin was pulled a little too tight around the eyes, and it looked just a little bit too perfect. I had known that horse for the better part of 2 decades, and this wasn't him, and after a while, I swear to God, he licked his lips. The long tongue of a horse. I felt so creeped out by the fact that I decided not to tell any of the cowboys about it. They were a superstitial kind. No need for any extra friction in the bunkhouse. After we wrapped up, I started making my way back to the house. During that walk, it struck me that something else was off about Newton. The eyes. Despite the outwardly likeness between a horse's eye and a human's, they are quite different, especially in context, and he had stared at me with human eyes. I went back to the stable to make sure my mind wasn't playing tricks on me, despite the growing anxiety I felt. When I turned on the lights, he was nowhere to be found. Our most prized possession. Gone in an instant. A cowboy found his skin later that week hanging from a branch deep in the forest. Dad knew. I knew. But we didn't tell the workers that. To them, this was the doing of rivaling ranches or thrill seekers or whatever. So they remained calm, but in the main residence behind closed doors, unrest grew. I had told my dad about the encounter in the stable, and we came to the only logical conclusion. It wasn't like that deer all those years ago. No, they were adapting, learning, becoming a threat. They were getting closer. No, they are close now, I can feel it. I am writing this from my beloved rocking chair. It is very dark here currently. Everybody is sleeping, and for reasons that will become clear later, everybody means a lot of people. Just a moment ago, a shadow moved silently in the dark towards the bathroom. I'm not completely sure it was him, but it almost looked like the silhouette of my dad, walking. I didn't call out to him. 3 weeks ago, we had a nightly visitor. Me and my wife sat curled up on our couch under a blanket. The soft glow of the TV casted dancing lights around the room. Some of those hit our kids, others mom and dad. The evening news droned on in the background, and we waited patiently for the movie to resume. The house was still, in a sense. The only sounds were the rustling of pillows and the occasional creak of old wood settling. A sudden knock on the door changed that. I glanced at the clock, 10:37 p.m. Odd time for visitors, huh? Mom said. Yeah. Kids, follow Mommy and Grammy upstairs, Dad added. It's bedtime, guys, I said, giving them both a kiss on the cheek. Nighty! They had barely made it halfway up when the knocking began anew, this time more aggressive. I peered out the window next to the front door. There was a figure standing out on the porch, cloaked in the dim light of a lantern outside. He looked almost ordinary, dressed in a worn flannel shirt and jeans. Maybe a drifter or trucker down on his luck, I thought. But there was something off about the way he stood too still, too deliberate. I unlocked the door and cracked it open slightly, making sure to keep the chain on. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sorry to bother you, sir. My car broke down around the bend, and my phone's dead. Could I borrow yours to call for help?" "Where's your car?" I remember asking, thinking that the sooner I helped him, the sooner he'd be gone. "Just over there," he said, pointing vaguely into the darkness. No car. Strange. I must have walked farther than I thought. His request seemed reasonable enough, yet something felt wrong. There was an imminent danger, I knew it. His eyes, dark, seemed to bore into me, and his smile never wavered. "Just a minute, buddy." I closed the door and went to retrieve my phone. While on the move, I grabbed one of the rifles hanging on the wall and handed it to my dad. Even though he was wheelchair-bound, he was still apt with a gun in his hands. When I started making my way back to the door, I saw the handle start shaking. I ran to open it. "Hey man, take it easy." My voice faltered a bit. He didn't say anything, so I just handed him the phone. The man stepped forward, and as he did, the light from the hallway illuminated his face more clearly. His skin, though human-like, seemed too tight, almost as if it were stretched over something not quite the right shape. There was a slight, unnatural sheen to it, like nude. "Thank you," he said, his voice a touch too practiced. As he dialed, he glanced at me, eyes flickering over my face. Studying me, I felt an instinctive urge to back away. The air around him felt charged, oppressive. "Got through," he said, handing the phone back. "Help's on the way." I nodded. "Good, that's good. Mind if I wait inside? It's pretty cold out here." It was cold indeed. I noticed my breath fog in the night air, but his remained clear, unaffected. At that moment, I remember wishing that my dad would take charge, like he used to when I was a kid. Maybe just shoot the guy, but this was my responsibility now. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice firm. "I can't let you in. You can wait on the porch if you'd like." His smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of something dark passing over his expression. "Of course." I started closing the door, but he put his foot down before I could react. His eyes looked crazed, more like a deer's than a human's, and the fingers he put around the door frame were crooked, bent in subtly awful angles. "You got kids in there?" he said, this time with a tinge of desperation. "No, but I do have a gun." The man noticed my father. He took a long look at him. His smile started creeping back, and he calmed down yet again. He combed his hair with his hands. "I'll just wait out here, thank you." I slammed the door shut, locking it, engaging the second chain. Through the window, I watched as he tried the door a couple more times. Then he stood there far too still, for far too long. Finally, he turned and walked off into the night. His movements too fluid, too alien. It all left an indelible mark of dread. "Good job, son," Dad said, letting silence do most of the talking. "Forgive me if I got some of the details wrong. I was more scared than I've ever been before. This isn't your typical boogeyman, or even a murderer we're talking about here. This is something that can and will take the skin of your loved ones just to get to you. An evil unmatched by anything that has ever visited me in my nightmares. Now there are tales about them, stories that have existed ever since people first stepped foot on the continent. Hushed words spoken around midnight campfires. You aren't supposed to let them hear you talking about them. That is an invitation. When they're far away, they sound close. When they're close, they sound far away. That sort of thing. Nothing about how you protect yourself from them, though. The worst encounters are always the quiet ones. Earlier today, I saw one through the window on the second floor. He was standing halfway behind a tree. I don't know if it thought it was hidden, or if it was toying with me. It was eerie. He had a very normal-looking suit on, except it was dirty and ridden with holes, and he reminded me of someone. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if they take the clothes too. How does it even work? Do they skin their victims and dress themselves physically? Is it metaphysical in some manner? Spiritual, perhaps? Do they just morph into their desired form? Either way, it requires a dead body. Maybe the rest of the details are unnecessary. Details, they are crucial now. Before you could spot them from far away, they'd take over an animal and not know how it walked, how it sounded. Sometimes you could even hear them practice. They make a bone-chilling noise, like a mix between the desperate, dying shriek of an elk and the rageful war cry of an adult man. Now, apparently, they can talk just like us. Details the devil lies in them. On the floor in front of me, all the cowboys are spread out on mattresses. Some are snoring, some are restlessly rolling around in their sleep. My family is here too. Everybody is gathered under the same roof. Figured it was safer that way. We have a system of delegating guard duties. We do 2 hours at a time. After what happened last week, there is no room for error anymore. I just hope that I didn't invite the enemy into my home. During supper earlier tonight, one of the cowboys looked at me in a strange manner, but it wasn't the same look I have seen them dish out before. This was more of a curious expression. The only weird part was the duration of it, but maybe he's just confused and scared. I know I am. Now, where was I? Last week, tragedy struck. I'll give you the recap. We were down by the lake repairing a fence. Me and 4-day workers, John, Edgar, Harold, and Ringer. I do not know his real name. Call me a horrible boss if you want, but such is the case with day workers. I call them what the other cowboys call them. Anyhow, the nickname had a double meaning. Firstly, he was an old boxer. Apparently, he was quite good too. Secondly, he had a tough life up until that point. He had been put through the ringer in both senses of the word. Born addicted to some drug, lived with an alcoholic father, who later decided to end the life of Ringer's biological mother, and bounced around from job to job during his whole adult life. I'm guessing you know where this is going. Why else describe him in so much detail? Details? I missed one that day. The thing with trying to protect your employees through secrecy is that they can't protect themselves without me. It makes sense. How can you protect yourself from a danger you don't even know exists? I take full and utter responsibility for the incident, and I'm heartbroken about it. The sun was shining on us. The grass was a type of green you don't see very often. All in all, a perfect day to do some fence maintenance. This is quintessential work on a ranch. Everybody knows how to do it. So it sort of becomes automatic at some point. We were all sitting spread out on the fence line, doing our tasks in silence, taking in the serenity of the scene. Ringer sat next to me, maybe a couple of yards away. We all heard the whisper at the same time. It sounded like it came just from the other side of the fence. It was so close, so damn close. I told everybody to stay put. This wasn't a sound you should explore. Ringer, being the good-hearted man that he was, didn't listen. He crouched beneath the barbed wire and made his way over to the closest bush. I followed anxiously. He slowly separated the foliage with his hands. My heart was beating fast. I could sense the nervousness of the other cowboys, even if they had no idea what they had to be nervous about. And then, nothing. I let out a sigh of relief. We're all good, probably just a... He was interrupted by a noise, the very same noise I described earlier. A distant, primal roar. In a second, it was over. Something impossibly fast had grabbed him in a drive-by. I didn't fully register what it was, but it looked like a naked man hopping on all fours. I made the mistake of trying to pull him away, something that resulted in me being flung into the fencing. The pain of being wrapped in barbed wire, let me tell you, is something not even whiskey will fix. But yeah, he was gone, disappeared into the forest, put through the ringer one last time. Now that I think about it again, I think that was why I recognized the man in the suit. He kind of looked like Ringer. Fuck, man. They are toying with us. I can feel the effects of it too. I'm paranoid. I see patterns that may not be there. As I sit here, I've compiled a list of all the times this last week that someone has been isolated from the group. I've interviewed everyone, noting their schedules. Even my own family. Every odd tick, every weird phrasing, and every strange look is documented in a small leather-bound book I keep here by my side. During the break-in paragraphs, I went to check the house. When I got to the basement, I found a small puddle of blood on the floor in the dark. I think this confirms my morbid suspicion. They're inside. But who? I can't figure it out, at least not for sure, and I can't just walk up to someone and shoot them in their sleep, right? What if I'm wrong? No, I wait for their next move. Hopefully when dawn comes, we're all still here and human, but I fear that the night may bring horrors. massacre. We'll see in the morning. Thank you for watching the video fully. Please hit the like and subscribe button, since I could not make these videos without your support, and it means the world to me.